Uh, Virgo, everything stable is about to be obliterated, isn't it? You can feel the ocean pulling back before the massive wave arrives. That eerie stillness that precedes absolute upheaval. And what's barreling towards you before next Monday isn't gentle ripple or manageable swell, but total inundation that's going to sweep away every fixed point you've been clinging to, every assumption you've built your sense of reality around. Let me tell you what I'm reading in the cataclysmic shift patterns encircling you. The absolute first rupture breaking through the surface tension is your dawning awareness that normalcy just ended. You're probably noticing this creeping wrongness in how your days feel. Like you're living the last moments of before, like you're standing in the final frames of one movie before the genre completely changes. You might be detecting this vertigo where solid ground is already liquefying under your feet, where relationships that seemed permanent are revealing fault lines, where plans you made with confidence are suddenly irrelevant because the landscape those plans were designed for is being demolished by incoming force you can sense but can't yet fully see. Here's the brutally honest observation about your concrete situation. You're about to experience radical discontinuity. You might be tracking warning signs, conversations that feel weighted differently, opportunities appearing that weren't in your field of vision yesterday, people behaving uncharacteristically, all of it adding up to this undeniable conclusion that Monday represents a threshold, and whatever arrives before that date is going to render your previous reality obsolete. You could be sensing this isn't improvement of existing conditions, but total replacement, where what you knew as your life gets washed away and something unrecognizable gets deposited in its place. What's building in the tectonic rupture zones is total system overload approaching. You might be dealing with not one explosive development, but 7, 12, 20 simultaneous detonations. Every sector of your existence destabilizing at once. You could be tracking career imploding or launching into stratosphere, relationship ending catastrophically, or beginning with intensity that feels equally destructive to your equilibrium, financial situation collapsing or multiplying beyond your capacity to integrate. And the all at once quality of transformation bearing down on you is what makes this tsunami rather than storm. There's no shelter, no high ground, no way to protect even small corner of your life from being completely drenched in change. This reflection invites you to examine whether the terror you're experiencing about total transformation is actually about loss, or whether it's revealing your addiction to control, your dependence on predictability for sense of safety, your inability to trust yourself to survive anything that requires you to rebuild from rubble rather than renovate existing structure. You're probably noticing yourself oscillating between exhilaration and absolute panic. You could be experiencing moments where this feels like liberation finally, something big enough to justify the restlessness you've been suppressing. Finally, permission to blow up life that wasn't working anyway is less than hash zero. 5 hash is greater than, immediately followed by moments of pure existential terror where you're grasping for any solid thing to hold on to and finding nothing, realizing that even your own identity is negotiable in face of what's approaching. You might be detecting this as simultaneously the best and worst thing that could happen. And that paradox is accurate because tsunamis are neutral forces. They destroy indiscriminately, which means they destroy both what was killing you and what was sustaining you. What's radiating through the obliteration channels is recognition that congratulations feels obscene and also precisely correct. You might be grappling with why anyone would celebrate catastrophic disruption, but somewhere underneath your resistance, you're understanding that stagnation was its own form of death, that the life you were living had already ended in slow motion, that you've been mourning in advance for months or years. You could be sensing that tsunami is an answer to prayer you didn't consciously speak. The anything but this you've whispered in desperate moments, when carefully constructed existence felt like tomb rather than shelter. And now that anything is arriving, you're discovering that you actually meant anything manageable, which isn't what you're getting. What's particularly savage about what I'm witnessing is you're approaching zero choice scenario. You might be detecting that this isn't fork in road where you select direction. This is the road washing away entirely, removing option to stay where you are. Forcing movement, not because you've decided readiness, but because remaining static is no longer physically possible. You could be tracking decisions being made for you, circumstances eliminating alternatives you thought you had, situations resolving themselves without your input. And that powerlessness is either your worst nightmare or your deepest relief, depending on how honest you're being about whether your careful planning was genuine wisdom or elaborate procrastination disguised as prudence. Um, you're probably observing that people around you can feel something shifted in your field, even if they can't name what. Um, you could be experiencing others treating you differently, more wary or more drawn to you, sensing danger or opportunity radiating from you in ways that change how they position themselves relative to you. You might be noticing social fabric starting to tear as some relationships can't survive frequency you're entering, while others that seemed peripheral are suddenly central because they're built to withstand intensity that would destroy more fragile connections. And watching your entire social ecosystem reorganize itself before the main event even arrives is a preview of comprehensive reconstruction coming. What's threading through the annihilation grids is peculiar specificity of Monday the 9th as marker. You might be fixated on that date as deadline, as point of no return, as last moment of before. You could be unconsciously treating everything between now and then as borrowed time, acting with strange combination of recklessness and sentimentality, saying things you'd normally suppress, taking risks you'd normally calculate away, treating ordinary moments as precious because you're anticipating they represent dying world. And that shift in how you're inhabiting present is actually accurate. You are living, ending, and treating it as such is appropriate rather than dramatic. This reflection invites you to consider what you're still pretending you don't know about what's coming, and whether maintaining that pretense serves any function beyond delaying inevitable reckoning with truth you've already detected but haven't verbalized because speaking it makes it undeniably real. You're probably noticing physical symptoms of impending cataclysm. You could be experiencing insomnia that isn't anxiety driven but energy driven. Your system too activated by what it's preparing for to waste time on rest. You might be tracking appetite changes, emotional volatility that seems disproportionate to triggers, crying or laughing at random provocations. All of it evidence that your nervous system knows what your conscious mind is still trying to rationalize, knows that massive adaptation is required, and is already beginning recalibration before circumstances force it. What's also detonating is realization that congratulations isn't sarcasm, it's legitimate acknowledgement. You might be wrestling with accepting that this destruction is gift, that what looks like your life falling apart is actually your life falling together in configuration that serves actual you rather than performed you. You could be beginning to grasp that Tsunami doesn't care about your carefully curated image, your strategic 5 year plan, your need to appear like you have it together. And that indifference to your ego's preferences is precisely what makes this force capable of delivering you to authenticity that incremental change never could, because incremental change lets you maintain illusion of control. The frequency signatures suggest you're experiencing this through multiple simultaneous channels. You could be tracking romantic tsunami and professional tsunami and financial tsunami and spiritual tsunami all converging on same narrow window. None of them waiting politely for you to finish processing the other. You might be noticing that life isn't giving you luxury of dealing with one crisis at a time, of rebuilding one area while others stay stable, which feels unfair and overwhelming, but is actually merciful because it prevents you from rebuilding partial life and forces you to reconstruct everything from foundation, ensuring nothing rotten from old structure gets incorporated into new one. What's critical is you're approaching revelations that recontextualize your entire history. You might be about to understand why relationships ended the way they did, why opportunities you thought were failures were actually narrow escapes, why your path has been winding instead of direct. You could be detecting that Tsunami is bringing clarity that reorganizes past from random suffering into purposeful preparation. And having your pain suddenly make sense, seeing how every heartbreak was protection and every delay was positioning, is going to shift you from victim consciousness to participant consciousness in ways that change how you engage with whatever comes next. This reflection invites you to examine whether you're more attached to narrative of yourself as person, things happen to, or whether you're ready to accept agency even in situations where you didn't consciously choose the outcome, recognizing that your energy, your patterns, your unexamined beliefs were actively creating circumstances you experienced as imposed from outside. Um, you're probably picking up on specific person or situation being Tsunami's entry point. You could be tracking one relationship or one decision or one revelation functioning as breach and dam. The single failure point that once it gives way allows everything else to flood through. You might be noticing yourself fixating on that one thing as if managing it will prevent larger collapse, not yet understanding that the one thing is symptom, not cause. That entire system was already compromised, and this is just where pressure found release, which means even if you shore up that specific weakness, deluge finds another route because it's not about the route, it's about water that has to go somewhere. What I'm witnessing in the devastation blueprints is you're going to lose things you thought were permanent. You're probably going to watch relationships you believed were unshakable reveal themselves as conditional. Identities you built decades of life around dissolve into irrelevance. Certainties you organized existence around prove negotiable. You might be facing literal losses, job ending, partner leaving, living situation becoming untenable, or metaphorical ones, belief systems collapsing, self concepts no longer fitting, future you'd imagined becoming impossible, and distinguishing between actual tragedy and necessary shedding is work you're being forced into, whether you feel ready or not. The obliteration resonances suggest you're experiencing this as death process. You could be tracking genuine grief, mourning for who you were, for life you had, for future you thought you were building toward. You might be noticing that congratulations feels like mockery because you're in legitimate pain about what's being destroyed. And holding both truths, that this is devastating and that this is exactly what needs to happen, is advanced spiritual work that doesn't make the pain less real, but does give it meaning beyond random cruelty. What's also surging is recognition that you can't prepare for this in ways you're trying to. You're probably attempting to create contingency plans, to control at least some variables, to maintain illusion that with enough foresight you can manage what's coming. You might be list making, scenario planning, trying to get ahead of wave. And all of that is understandable, but ultimately useless because tsunamis don't negotiate, don't respect your preparation, don't care that you weren't finished getting ready. The only useful preparation is internal, deciding now that you're going to survive this, that you're capable of rebuilding, that you trust yourself in total uncertainty. This reflection invites you to examine what you're actually trying to protect through all your preparation. And whether those things are worth protecting or whether defending them is precisely what's keeping you stuck in life. That tsunami is arriving to forcibly liberate you from. So, as you count down days to Monday while tsunami builds offshore, stop trying to sandbag. You're probably exhausting yourself attempting to prevent inevitable, building defenses against force that laughs at defenses. What if instead you practice surrender? What if you acknowledge you're not stopping this and got curious about what survives is less than has hone? Zero hash is greater than because something in you will survive, probably the parts you've been neglecting because you were too busy maintaining the parts that were always going to be temporary. Trust that congratulations is accurate, even though it doesn't feel like it yet. You're probably too close to impact to see blessing in destruction. But from wider vantage point, this is mercy killing of life that was already dead, forced evolution you needed but wouldn't choose voluntarily, divine intervention wearing disaster's costume. The life you had was too small. The future you were planning was based on who you used to be, not who you're becoming. And tsunami is universe's way of clearing space for reality that matches your actual capacity rather than your fearful settling. Monday is coming. Tsunami is coming. Total transformation is coming. And trying to feel grateful for catastrophe before it happens is asking too much. But what you can do is decide now that when water recedes, when devastation is complete, when you're standing in wreckage of everything you knew, you're going to look for what's possible in the ruins instead of just mourning what's gone. You're going to rebuild weird and wild and true instead of trying to recreate a sanitized version of what just got destroyed. Congratulations. Not because this is going to be comfortable, not because you asked for this, but because after Monday, after the wave, after the total reconfiguration of your entire existence, you're going to be free in ways you can't even imagine from inside the prison you've been calling life. The tsunami is coming, and it's going to give you back to yourself. Let it come, you'll survive it, and what you build after will finally be worth living in.